As I step through the rusty iron gates of the Eastwood Mental Hospital, a shiver runs down my spine. The once grand institution now stands as a dilapidated shell, looming ominously against the moonlit sky. The air is heavy with the weight of forgotten memories and the whispered secrets of tortured souls. I am not alone in this venture. 3 brave friends of mine named Sarah, Josh, and Derek accompany me, their hearts pounding with a mix of trepidation and excitement. Armed with their cameras, we intended to capture the paranormal activity that is said to haunt these decaying halls. We wanted to create a YouTube video that will both entertain and terrify their audience. The legends surrounding Eastwood Mental Hospital are ripe with tales of restless spirits, tortured souls who never found solace in life or death. As we enter the echoing corridors, a sense of unease washes over me. The dim, flickering lights cast eerie shadows on the peeling wallpaper, revealing glimpses of a forgotten past. The air is stagnant, tainted by the smell of decay and abandonment. Each creaking floorboard seems to echo through the hollow halls, as if the building itself is alive with anticipation. Sarah, the fearless leader of the group, guides you deeper into the bowels of the asylum. She tries to hide her nerves behind a confident smile, her voice cracking slightly as she points out places of interest. Josh, the skeptic of the group, makes sarcastic remarks, attempting to lighten the mood. Derek, the camera operator, diligently captures every moment, his lens becoming the eyes of their future audience. Hours pass as we explore the labyrinthine corridors, each room revealing more disturbing remnants of the hospital's past. I had stumbled upon crumbling patient records, old medical equipment, and even remnants of restraints used to confine the mentally ill. The oppressive atmosphere becomes suffocating, but the anticipation of discovering something truly supernatural keeps me going. However, as the night grows darker, an unexplainable chill fills the air. Whispers begin to echo through the halls, carrying the tortured murmurs of long-forgotten souls. Our nerves start to fray. Our laughter had been replaced with anxious glances. Shadows dance in the corners of our vision, flickering in and out of existence like phantoms. In the heart of the asylum, a room hidden away from prying eyes, I'd stumbled upon a collection of photographs. The images depict the patients in various states of anguish, their eyes hollow and despair etched onto their faces. One picture in particular catches my attention. The figure of a tall, gaunt man with wild, unkempt hair, his eyes burning with madness. It sent a chill down my spine, as if his gaze follows my every move. Suddenly, a door slams shut behind me, the sound reverberating through the empty hallways. Panic sets in as we trace back, searching for an exit. But the asylum seems to change before our eyes, twisting into a nightmarish maze. The walls morph, the ceiling lowers, and the very air becomes dense and suffocating. Whispers grow louder, the tormented voices overlapping into an incoherent symphony of anguish. Shadows solidify into grotesque forms, manifesting as the restless spirits that haunt this forsaken place. The ghosts of the mentally insane, driven to madness in life, now seek vengeance upon the living. Me, Sarah, Josh, and Derek run, our screams lost amidst the cacophony of spectral wails. But no matter where we turned, we found ourselves trapped in this macabre nightmare. We decided to split up and look for an exit in teams of 2. As me and Derek frantically sprint through the twisting corridors of the Eastwood Mental Hospital, the screams of Sarah and Josh echo behind us. Fear grips my heart, urging me to move faster, to escape the clutches of the vengeful spirits. The air grows thicker, charged with an otherworldly energy. The wails of tormented souls grow louder, filling the space around us. Derek's breath comes in ragged gasps beside me, matching the rhythm of my pounding heart. Suddenly, we catch a glimpse of light up ahead, a faint glimmer promising an exit from this nightmarish labyrinth. Adrenaline courses through my veins, pushing us forward as if guided by an unseen force. Me and Derek push through the final doorway, stumbling out into the cool night air, gasping for breath. Relief washes over me as you realize we escaped the clutches of the spirits. The weight of the asylum fades behind me, replaced by the comfort of freedom. But a bittersweet sorrow tugs at my heart as you remember Sarah and Josh left behind to face the wrath of the vengeful souls. Me and Derek stand outside the asylum, the reality of what just transpired sinking in. I exchange a silent, solemn look, understanding the sacrifice made by your friends. Their bravery and curiosity ultimately led to their tragic demise. In the aftermath, me and Derek decide to honor the memory of Sarah and Josh. I vow to share their story, not as a sensationalized YouTube video, but as a cautionary tale. I want the world to know the dangers of delving into the supernatural without proper preparation and respect. With heavy hearts, I gather the footage recorded by Derek's camera, carefully piecing together a documentary that pays tribute to our lost friends. It serves as a reminder of the paranormal forces that lurk in the shadows and the devastating consequences that can accompany such investigations. As the documentary gains attention, its purpose becomes clear: to raise awareness about the haunted history of the Eastwood Mental Hospital and the spirits that continue to roam its forsaken halls. Me and Derek channel your grief into a mission of education and reverence, ensuring that Sarah and Josh's sacrifice is never forgotten. The spirits of the mentally insane still haunt the abandoned asylum, their presence a chilling reminder of the price paid for curiosity. And while me and Derek manage to escape with our lives, the weight of their loss forever imprints upon our souls, a constant reminder of the darkness that dwells within the realm of the paranormal. In the forsaken town of Ravenswood, where the evening mist draped over the dilapidated buildings, vestiges of a haunting past whispered through the desolate alleyways, unsettling the hearts of those who dared to wander its streets. Residual echoes of the ancient curse continued to reverberate through the town, entwining the newer terrors with the dark legacy that had plagued the community for generations. At the heart of Ravenswood stood a long-abandoned hospital, its looming facade a testament to the town's darkest secrets. Legends of tormented spirits and ghostly apparitions surrounded the hospital, a chilling history that failed to dissuade a group of curious explorers, led by the audacious Mark, from unraveling the enigmas concealed within its decaying walls. Mark, having barely recovered from the harrowing ordeal within the haunted mansion, now found himself drawn into a newer, more insidious nightmare that seemed to hold the entire town in its icy grip. As the group ventured into the hospital's forsaken halls, an eerie chill gripped their souls, a precursor to the unearthly entities that lurked within its shadowy corridors. Shadows swirled and whispered along the crumbling architecture, beckoning the unsuspecting intruders into a maze of forgotten nightmares, where the boundaries between reality and terror blurred into a relentless frenzy of haunting apparitions. The spectral manifestations they encountered seemed to echo the tormenting whispers of the malevolent spirits that had once inhabited the mansion, a reminder that the darkness had not yet relinquished its hold on the town. Unbeknownst to the explorers, a malevolent presence had awakened within the depths of the hospital, its spectral gaze fixated on their every move, eager to ensnare them in its insidious grasp. The faded walls of the hospital hummed with a foreboding energy, hinting at the impending doom that loomed over the intrepid group like a shroud of darkness. The ethereal force, seemingly connected to the ancient malevolence that had plagued the mansion, seemed to have found a new host within the decaying confines of the forsaken hospital, its hunger for souls seemingly insatiable. Meanwhile, in the nearby woods, the serenity of the night was shattered by an unseen force that surged through the once tranquil groves. The ancient trees quivered and contorted, their gnarled branches reaching out with menacing intent, ensnaring unsuspecting wanderers in a nightmarish tangle of primal terror and despair. The very earth beneath their feet seemed to convulse in a maddening rhythm, echoing the unearthly forces at play in the heart of Ravenswood. The encroaching terror now seemed to extend its dark roots beyond the confines of the haunted hospital, infiltrating the natural world and infusing the nearby woods with an unholy energy that threatened to consume anything that dared to trespass. In the depths of the hospital's forgotten archives, the explorers stumbled upon a collection of old documents, their fragile pages marked with cryptic symbols and chilling accounts of inexplicable phenomena that plagued the town for centuries. As they delved deeper into the enigmatic records, a sudden burst of unearthly wails shattered the silence, heralding the awakening of a long-dormant evil that threatened to devour their very souls. The ancient journals seemed to hold a dark connection to the cursed text that had foretold the horrors of the mansion. a cryptic link that hinted at a more sinister, interconnected force weaving its way through the shadows of Ravenswood. Desperate to escape the clutches of the hospital, the explorers fled through the labyrinthine corridors, their breaths quickening with each step as the walls contorted and contended with their sanity. The wails of the unearthly spirits grew louder, intertwining with the frantic blare of the emergency alarms, driving the group further into the depths of a nightmare from which they feared they might never awaken. Their flight through the haunted hospital seemed to mirror their frantic escape from the mansion, both experiences woven together by the unrelenting malevolence that had ensnared the town in its unyielding grip. Outside, the moon cast an ethereal glow over the twisted silhouette of the hospital, its facade looming like a forgotten sentinel over the ruins of Ravenswood. The night air stirred with an unspoken dread, as if the very fabric of reality threatened to unravel under the weight of the unspeakable horrors that permeated the forsaken town. The looming presence of the hospital, now echoing the eerie silhouette of the haunted mansion, seemed to underscore the ever-present darkness that lingered over the town, a dark and relentless force that refused to yield to the passage of time. As the survivors emerged from the nightmarish ordeal, their minds haunted by the echoes of the malevolent forces they had encountered, they gazed upon the ruins of the hospital, an enduring testament to the fragility of the human spirit in the face of unfathomable terror. The fragments of their shared nightmare lingered like a ghostly remnant, etched into the very fabric of their consciousness, a chilling reminder of the enduring legacy of fear that transcended the boundaries of time and space. The shattered remnants of the hospital stood as a testament to the indomitable darkness that continued to cast its relentless shadow over Ravenswood, leaving a trail of broken spirits and shattered dreams in its wake, as the fragments of fear and terror became inseparably entwined within the tormented tapestry of the forsaken town. They say time heals all wounds, but mine feel like they're getting worse the longer I stay at this place. It's been a few weeks since my last post, and lo behold, I'm still here. I know you people must think I'm absolutely crazy for staying. I keep finding myself getting ready for the next shift, waiting for another monster to appear around the corner. Why am I the only one that's seeing them? I ask myself that every time I get into my car and drive towards the hospital. What is driving me further into this madness? Seeing these horrible things makes me want to make sure that no one else that comes to that hospital becomes another lost soul, another horror story. Perhaps those are just pretty words to disguise my insatiable curiosity. I want to make a difference, I want to do something, but I'm slowly losing the strength to go on. The last few incidents have rocked me to my core, but something happened recently that almost made me lose faith in everything. It was just a week ago I was pulling into the parking lot at the hospital when I noticed a few cop cars pulled up close to the entrance. When I got closer, I could hear a man wailing at the top of his lungs from inside the lobby. I cautiously stepped forward to see a few police officers trying to hold down a man. He was a stocky, middle-aged white man with thinning brown hair, and his face was covered in tears. A couple of officers were at the side trying to calm the man down. I looked over to see a doctor sitting on the ground covering an eye that was forming a bruise. A few minutes passed until the police were finally able to calm the man down. I briskly made my way through. I was getting late for my shift, and there was nothing I could do for them. That night, the hospital was abuzz with what had happened, and it was much worse than I thought. It took a while to sift through what was real and what was just gossip. Apparently, there was an accident not long before I got there. We had a teenage patient in our care named Danielle, a beautiful young woman with long brunette hair, a glowing smile, and such a bright personality. She was often in and out of the hospital due to some minor complications. Danielle was 8 months pregnant, and it was really taking a toll on her physically. I've met her a couple of times. Though she was in pain, she always kept a sunny disposition. We would occasionally chat. She would express her worries about being a young mother, her future, and things at home. Things weren't going well with her and her boyfriend. They often argued with each other, and their parents couldn't help but chime in. She absolutely loved her boyfriend, but at the end of the day, they were still children. There wasn't much she could do but go through with the pregnancy and prepare herself to be a mother. Earlier that afternoon, just before I got there, she had lost her life. That afternoon, she complained that her feet were aching and insisted that she take a walk. That wasn't an odd request at all, so she was allowed to do so. About 10 minutes or so had passed when they noticed that she was no longer walking through the hallway. They checked her room to find it empty and immediately split up to look for her. One of the nurses went to the stairwell about 20 minutes afterwards and found her body at the bottom of the set of stairs. Danielle and her baby were both gone. The authorities and her family were notified of the incident. Her father didn't take it well. Of course, he didn't take the news well. He was sad and angry and took it out on the nearest doctor. That was when I came in at the tail end of the incident. The officers questioned everyone that was working at the time and came to the conclusion that she had ended her own life. That was what got to me. She didn't seem like the person that would do that. But then again, no one ever really knows. For a while, there was an oppressive air that fell upon the place. A lot of nurses blamed themselves for not keeping a better eye on her. There wasn't much else we could do. Unfortunately, death is commonplace at a hospital, so we're forced to pick up the pieces and move on to the next person in need of help. A few days after everything happened, that's when the story started to circulate. Eventually, many of the staff refused to go towards the stairwell. It started off as a simple superstition, someone just died there kind of thing. Then it turned into people feeling things on their shoulders, cold chills running down their spine, and hearing noises akin to crying. Slowly but surely the stories came that the stairwell had become haunted, another ghost story to add to this place. I did my best to avoid the stairs. We had elevators, so the likelihood of me using them was low. I knew that if I were to go to those stairs, I would regret it. As I continued my night shifts, something at the back of my brain was scratching at me. I kept thinking of Danielle. Even though we only talked a few times, she was a life that was here. I wanted to know if there was anything I could do for her, if she was trapped here. Curiosity was slowly taking the best of me, simple curiosity that of course kills the cat. We were having a pretty slow night and it was a couple of more hours until my shift would end. I did something incredibly stupid. I made my way towards the wing where it happened, got onto the elevator and took it to the floor where she was. I stepped through the door onto the stairwell and I stood there at the top of the steps. It was so quiet that I could hear my breath echo down the stairs. I just stood there staring down those hard steps as I imagined not Danielle but myself tumbling down them. I grabbed the railing and closed my eyes, wondering what the hell I was even doing there. I stood there for a few moments, reminiscing the brief conversations I've had with Danielle. She would talk about how excited she would be to have a little boy, so afraid of being alone if her boyfriend didn't stay. I took a deep breath as I felt a tear roll down my cheek. Danielle was so young. Goosebumps started to form on my skin as a sudden burst of cold air circled around me. That's when I realized that I was no longer alone. My eyes were still closed, but I could hear something at the bottom of the steps below me. It was heavy and labored breathing. Each inhale had a faint bubbling to it, and each exhale I could hear a low crack, like something breaking. My body began to tremble. I gripped onto the railing to steady myself. I could hear it move now. It was making its way up. I could hear wet slaps hitting the steps, followed by a disgusting crunch. I didn't want to open my eyes. I stood there saying to myself, "Don't look, don't look, don't look." It was getting closer and closer. I took one deep, shaky breath and opened my eyes to see nothing. Relief washed over me. I slowly sat down at the top of the steps and let out a sigh. I leaned onto the rails. The metal was cold on top of my head. A chuckle escaped my lips as I thought of how I overreacted, how everyone was afraid of some ghost on the stairs. My chuckle soon turned into tears. I didn't know what I was expecting. A few more minutes had passed. I wiped my face and prepared myself to finish the rest of my shift until something brushed against me. I kicked my leg and jumped up. It felt like a cockroach had run across my ankle. I looked down to see something past the railing, a hint of brown quickly going beyond my view. I slowly peeked over the edge. My jaw dropped, and I let out a scream that filled the space around me, or rather us. She was hanging on the side of the railing almost underneath the stairs I was on. All I could see was a blood-splattered hospital gown and that familiar long brunette hair, except it was matted and dirty. "Danielle," I was finally able to utter, my throat sore from screaming. I heard her neck creak and snap as she turned her head up towards me. Her once beautiful smile was completely destroyed. Her lower jaw was barely hanging onto her face, What was left of her teeth were yellowed and bloodied. She was hanging there with bones jutting out of her fingers as she held onto the steps I was on. I backed up slowly as she climbed over the rail, her body slamming onto the bottom of the steps. My right hand was on the handle that led to the hallway. I pulled, but the door wouldn't fucking budge. I turned my full attention onto the door and began to frantically pull at it. I started banging my fists onto it, hoping someone would hear me. I looked through the small glass window to the door to see the hallway with nurses walking back and forth. "Help me!" I screamed out, but no one paid any heed to my cries. I looked down to look at Danielle. She was standing there at the bottom of the stairs. Her neck was bent into an L shape and her legs were bent in such an inhuman way. Her hair was covering her face. She was looking down onto her stomach. The lights flickered around us. I continued to try and open the door, but still it wasn't moving an inch. That was when I heard something rip. Fabric was being torn apart. I looked back down to her to see her ripping her gown open to reveal her stomach. I cried as I saw that it was flat and sunken on one side. I stood there completely frozen. I was stuck, and all I could do was witness this horrific scene. Danielle, what was left of Danielle, started to dig her fingertips into her belly. The noise that came out was a nauseating squish and tearing. My mouth hung open. I wanted to scream, but nothing would come out of me. She started to open herself up, wider and wider. Then was a faint thud. I looked beneath her to see that it was still attached to her by a dry rope-like umbilical cord, a small misshapen form of what looked like a baby. It just lay there, parts of its body flattened, a dry, bloody mess that writhed on the floor. A noise erupted from the baby, a high-pitched chittering like thousands of maggots clamoring atop one another. "Please, please stop, let me go." I shouted at Danielle, but she started to crawl up the stairs. Like a wounded animal, she was crawling up the stairs towards me, the baby dragging behind her. I was desperate and pushed my body against the door, but again, nothing. I refused to let her get to me, so I bolted up the stairs. I ran and ran up, the stairwell spiraling upwards. I looked down and I thought she was chasing me, but as I looked around, I saw that I wasn't going anywhere at all. It was futile. No matter how many steps I ran up, the distance between us didn't grow. She was now at my feet, her decaying hands reaching out towards me. I couldn't do anything else but let her take me. I felt her cold hands touch me through the pant legs of my scrubs. My skin was burning from the cold. I closed my eyes, ready for her to pull me down the stairs. That's when I saw something. Through the darkness of my closed eyes, I saw visions of something. A couple of weeks ago. Danielle was atop these very steps, alive and well. I was looking at her as if I was watching a movie. She wasn't alone. Standing beside her was a person wearing a black hoodie and jeans. I couldn't see the person's face very well. I couldn't hear anything, but from the looks of it, things weren't going well. Danielle was yelling at the person. Her eyes were red and puffy from sobbing. She kept on gesturing towards her full and pregnant belly, and she put her hand on the person's shoulder. They brushed her aside, and she stood there with the look of pure pain plastered onto her face. She clasped her hands together in a pleading way, then they pushed her down the stairs. I stood in awe as I saw her body roll down the stairs and slam onto the floor below. My head started to ache and a ringing filled my ears that was so loud I thought my brain was going to erupt. I looked down onto my ankle and Danielle. She was gone. I was alone again, standing atop those damn stairs. I pulled the handle to the door and sure enough, it opened like normal. I ran towards the bathrooms and immediately vomited into a nearby sink. I couldn't stop myself from shaking. I couldn't stop the crying. I had to pick myself up and carry the scraps around. I needed to stay composed unless everyone who doesn't think I'm crazy changed their minds. I had to continue the shift, and when I finally got home and crashed onto my carpeted floor, I just laid there. A few days later, there was word that there was foul play involved with Danielle's death. Her boyfriend snuck into the hospital. They talked, argued, and he simply pushed her down. His statement was, he couldn't live with himself. He kept on hearing the baby cry in his sleep. After hearing that, I couldn't help but laugh. I still hear the baby too. The hospital had always been a place of healing, but within its ancient walls lay secrets that no one wanted to uncover. St. Ilara's Hospital, built in the late 1800s, was known for its Gothic architecture and state-of-the-art medical facilities. However, its basement held a ward that had been abandoned for decades, a silent testimony to the tragedies that had occurred within its confines. Dr. Emily Reed had recently joined St. Ilara's as a resident. Her colleagues often spoke in hushed tones about the silent ward, a section of the hospital that was rumored to be haunted. Emily, curious and a skeptic by nature, decided to investigate. She found herself drawn to the mystery, unable to shake off the feeling that something was calling her. One night, Emily stayed late at the hospital, determined to uncover the truth. Armed with a flashlight and her medical bag, she made her way to the basement. The air grew colder as she descended the stairs, and a sense of foreboding settled over her. The walls were lined with peeling paint, and the flickering lights added to the eerie atmosphere. The door to the silent ward was ajar, creaking as she pushed it open. The room beyond was shrouded in darkness, with only her flashlight piercing through the gloom. Dust motes floated in the air, and the scent of mildew was overpowering. Old medical equipment lay scattered around, remnants of a bygone era. As Emily moved deeper into the ward, she noticed old patient records strewn across a desk. Flipping through them, she discovered a pattern. All the patients admitted to this ward had died under mysterious circumstances. The dates ranged from the early 1900s to the late 1950s, and the causes of death were always listed as unknown. A sudden noise made Emily jump. She turned her flashlight toward the source and saw a shadow dart across the hallway. Her heart pounded in her chest, but her curiosity outweighed her fear. She followed the shadow, her footsteps echoing in the silence. The hallway led to a room marked isolation. The door to the isolation room was heavy, and it took all her strength to push it open. Inside, the room was stark and empty, save for an old metal bed frame. Chains hung from the ceiling, and the walls were covered in scratches, as if someone had tried to claw their way out. A chill ran down Emily's spine as she imagined the horrors that had taken place here. Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind her. Emily spun around, her flashlight flickering. Panic set in as she realized she was trapped. She banged on the door, but it wouldn't budge. Her flashlight's beam began to waver, and she heard whispers all around her. The temperature dropped even further, and her breath came out in visible puffs. Desperation took over as she fumbled for her phone, but there was no signal. The whispers grew louder, more insistent. Emily's mind raced. She needed to find a way out before whatever was in the ward got to her. She tried to stay calm, focusing on her breathing. A voice, clearer than the rest, began to speak. "Help us. Find us," it pleaded. Emily's fear was replaced by a surge of determination. Whoever or whatever was in this ward needed help. She searched the room for any clues and found a hidden door behind a loose panel. The hidden door led to a narrow staircase that spiraled downwards. Emily hesitated for a moment before descending. The stairs creaked with every step, and the darkness seemed to swallow her whole. She reached the bottom and found herself in a small chamber filled with old medical files and equipment. In the corner of the room, she saw a stack of journals. She picked up the top one and began to read. It belonged to Dr. Jonathan Gray, the head physician of the silent ward during the 1920s. The entries detailed experiments conducted on the patients, all in the name of science. Dr. Gray believed he could cure mental illness by subjecting patients to extreme conditions. The more Emily read, the more horrified she became. Dr. Gray had tortured his patients, pushing them to the brink of insanity. Those who died were buried in unmarked graves beneath the hospital, their souls forever trapped within the ward. Emily realized that the voices she had heard were the spirits of these tormented patients. Determined to put an end to their suffering, Emily searched the chamber for anything that could help. She found a box of old candles and a book of ancient rituals. Using the information she had gathered, she set up a makeshift altar and lit the candles. She recited the ritual, calling upon the spirits to find peace. As she finished the incantation, the room grew even colder, and the whispers turned into cries of anguish. Emily stood her ground, repeating the ritual until the voices began to fade. The temperature slowly returned to normal, and a sense of calm settled over the chamber. Exhausted, Emily made her way back up the stairs. The hidden door was now open, and she stepped into the hallway. The air felt lighter, and the oppressive feeling that had weighed on her was gone. She hurried back to the main part of the hospital, her mind racing with the events of the night. The next day, Emily reported her findings to the hospital administration. They were skeptical at first, but a thorough investigation of the basement revealed the hidden chamber and the journals. The hospital decided to seal off the silent ward permanently, turning it into a memorial for the lost souls who had suffered there. Emily's experience changed her. She became an advocate for patient rights, ensuring that no one would ever endure the horrors that had taken place in the silent ward. The spirits of St. Ilara's Hospital were finally at peace, thanks to her bravery and determination. And though the silent ward was sealed, its story lived on. A chilling reminder of the darkness that can lurk even in places meant for healing. Dr. Sarah Mitchell had always prided herself on her rationality. As a seasoned surgeon at St. Margaret's Hospital, she had seen everything from life-threatening injuries to miraculous recoveries, but nothing had prepared her for what she would encounter one cold winter night. St. Margaret's was a sprawling hospital complex, its old wing a relic from the early 1900s. It had been a place of healing for decades, but within its hallowed halls lay whispers of ghostly encounters and strange occurrences. The staff often exchanged stories about the supernatural, but Sarah dismissed them as mere folklore. That was until she was assigned the night shift in the old wing. Sarah had been working long hours, covering shifts for a colleague who had fallen ill. On this particular night, she was tasked with monitoring a patient in room 308, a part of the old wing that was rarely used. The patient, Mr. Jameson, was a recluse, admitted with severe injuries from a car accident. His condition was stable, but he required constant observation. As Sarah made her way to room 308, she couldn't shake off the eerie feeling that had settled over her. The hallways were dimly lit, and the shadows seemed to dance along the walls. She pushed open the door to Mr. Jameson's room and found him lying still, his eyes closed. The monitors beeped rhythmically, a reassuring sign of life. Sarah settled into the chair beside the bed, her eyes scanning the room. It was a typical hospital room, with sterile white walls and a faint smell of antiseptic. But something felt off. She couldn't quite place it, but there was a palpable tension in the air. Hours passed and Sarah found herself dozing off. She awoke with a start when she heard a soft whisper. Her eyes darted around the room, but there was no one else there. She checked on Mr. Jameson, who was still unconscious. Convinced she had imagined it, she leaned back in her chair, trying to shake off the unease. As the night wore on, the whispers grew louder. They seemed to be coming from the walls, the floor, and even the ceiling. Sarah's rational mind tried to make sense of it, but the fear gnawing at her was undeniable. She decided to step out for a moment, hoping to clear her head. In the hallway, she met Nurse Lisa, who was making her rounds. "Everything all right, Dr. Mitchell?" Lisa asked, noticing the worry etched on Sarah's face. "I keep hearing whispers in Mr. Jameson's room," Sarah admitted, feeling foolish even as she said it. Lisa's expression darkened. "Room 308 has a history. They say it's haunted." Sarah raised an eyebrow. "Haunted? By what?" "No one knows for sure," Lisa replied. "But strange things happen there. Objects move, voices are heard, and sometimes patients see things that aren't there." Sarah scoffed, though the fear in her gut didn't dissipate. "I don't believe in ghosts." "Maybe you should," Lisa said quietly before continuing her rounds. Determined to prove her skepticism right, Sarah returned to room 308. The whispers had stopped, but the room felt colder. She checked Mr. Jameson's vitals again, finding them stable. Exhaustion tugged at her, and she eventually dozed off once more. She was jolted awake by the feeling of a cold hand on her shoulder. She gasped, her heart racing, and spun around. There was no one there. Trembling, she stood up, her breath visible in the cold air. The temperature had dropped drastically, and the whispers returned, louder and more insistent. "Help us!" The voice was clear this time, a chorus of desperate pleas. Sarah's rationality crumbled. She grabbed her flashlight and scanned the room, her hands shaking. In the beam of light, she saw a figure standing in the corner, its form flickering like a distorted image on a faulty screen. She blinked and it was gone. She stumbled back, her mind racing. She needed to get out, but something compelled her to stay. The whispers seemed to draw her toward the closet. With trembling hands, she opened the door, revealing nothing but darkness. Her flashlight flickered, and she heard the whispers again, now almost deafening. "Find us." She stepped into the closet, her pulse pounding in her ears. The back wall seemed off, like a poorly done repair job. Acting on instinct, she pushed against it. The wall gave way, revealing a narrow passageway. Sarah hesitated, every rational thought screaming at her to turn back. But the whispers were relentless. She squeezed through the opening and followed the passage. It led to a small, hidden room. The sight that greeted her was horrifying. Old hospital beds, restraint still attached, lined the room. The walls were covered in faded, bloody handprints. She found old, decaying medical files strewn about, detailing experiments conducted on patients. The files dated back to the early 1900s, during a time when mental health treatments were barbaric. One name caught her eye: Dr. William Hawthorne, a surgeon known for his controversial methods. The files revealed that he had conducted cruel experiments on the patients, believing he could cure mental illness through extreme measures. Many patients had died under his care, their deaths covered up to protect the hospital's reputation. Suddenly, Sarah felt a presence behind her. She turned, seeing the same flickering figure from the room. It was Dr. Hawthorne, his eyes filled with malice. The whispers grew louder, now a cacophony of anguish and pain. "Help us! Avenge us!" Sarah's fear turned to anger. These spirits had been tortured and forgotten. She grabbed the files and ran back to room 308. The temperature returned to normal and the whispers faded. Mr. Jameson's monitors beeped steadily, a sign of life in the midst of death. She reported her findings to the hospital administration. An investigation uncovered the hidden room and the atrocities committed by Dr. Hawthorne. The hospital decided to renovate the old wing, turning it into a memorial for the lost souls who had suffered there. Sarah's experience changed her. She became an advocate for ethical medical practices, ensuring that the horrors of the past would never be repeated. The spirits of St. Margaret's Hospital were finally at peace, thanks to her bravery and determination. And though the old wing was renovated, the memory of the silent ward lived on, a chilling reminder of the darkness that can lurk even in places meant for healing.